Hi, sixth graders. We're back for another page of notes, so grab your notebook and go ahead and write down page 4. The title of this page is going to be Mixed Numbers and Improper Fractions. Mixed numbers and improper fractions. So a short story to begin with. Sometimes when we're trying to communicate with other people, we have to switch languages, right? Let's say that you have a friend who only speaks Spanish and you only speak English, and you're interested in communicating with each other. And so one of two things has to happen. Either I have to start speaking Spanish or they have to start speaking English in order for us to understand each other. Well, mixed numbers and improper fractions happen to be two different languages of representing numbers, and they're equivalent. Similarly to how hello and hola are equivalent to each other, they mean the same thing. They're just expressed in different ways or different languages. And so we're going to talk about translating between a mixed number and an improper fraction today. Mixed numbers and improper fractions are two ways of writing down exactly the same number. And I'm going to illustrate this first with a small picture. So if you will draw this down at the top of your page, I'm going to draw 4 boxes. 1, 2, 4 rectangles, if you will. 3, 4. And I'm going to split these 4 boxes into 3 pieces each. Maybe this is a piece of cake. I don't know. Maybe these are cakes and they're being cut into 3 equal pieces. And I'm just going to lightly shade 3 of these holes. So 3 whole boxes, which means I'm shading 3 pieces in each. And then in the last box, or the last rectangle, I'm only going to shade 1 of the pieces. And so, if we think about ways of representing this picture, or ways of talking about this picture, if I say, well, how many pieces do you have? Or how much do you have? One person might say, well, what I see here is I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 pieces, and they're all thirds, right? Here's a third, 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 here's a third. 1, another third, another third. And so a person might look at this picture and say, well, this is representing 10 thirds. And if they said that, they would be right. 10 thirds is what we call an improper fraction. This is a completely correct way of describing this picture. The 10 on the top is the number of pieces, right? There are 10 pieces here. And the number on the bottom is the size of each piece. They are all thirds. And we would maybe describe this, or maybe you've heard it described as top-heavy, right? The top number is bigger than the bottom number. So that is what we would describe as an improper fraction. Anytime you have an improper fraction, that top number is always going to be bigger than the bottom. So I'm just going to write up here the top heavy. So 10 thirds, improper fraction. Now, someone else might look at the same picture and say, well, I don't see 10 individual pieces of thirds. What I see is one whole. Again, if we're talking about cake, this is like the whole cake. There's another whole. There's another whole. And then there's 1/3 of the next piece, right? So the first person, and I should have maybe labeled these. The first person saw this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. The first person saw individual pieces. The second person is going to see 1 whole, 2 holes, 3 holes, and then 1/3 of the last one. And so how would they write that number? Well, they would write it as 3 and 1/3. Now, 3 and 1/3 is, again, a perfectly legitimate way of writing this. We call this a mixed number. And so a mixed number has this large whole number out front, and it has a fraction part after it. And the beautiful thing about these is they are exactly the same. They are equivalent to each other. 10 thirds and 3 and 1/3 are the same. They're the same way of describing a picture This is improper fraction language, this is mixed number language. And so we like to be able to translate between the two because sometimes it's more useful and helpful to represent a number as a mixed number. But sometimes it's going to be way easier and way more helpful to do math with improper fractions. And so the rest of this page here is going to be, we're going to split our page down the middle because we want to be able to first go from an improper fraction to a mixed number, but then we want to be able to back up and go from a mixed number to an improper fraction. So go ahead and draw a line all the way across your page here. And for the rest of the notes, we're going to just draw a separator down the middle of the page. Try to make it as straight as possible. Hopefully your straight line is better than mine. And so on this side of our page, we're going to talk about going from, or to change, a mixed number into an improper fraction and on this side we're going to talk about changing a improper fraction into a mixed number. All right, and so we're going to start with a mixed number into an improper fraction, and so we're going to be working on this half of the page. All right, so let's look at the method for doing this. So we're going to start with a mixed number, because that's what we're changing. And so let's consider the number 3 1/4. All right, the number 3 1/4 is mixed because it has a large whole number and then a fractional piece. Well, in order to change this into an improper fraction, I like to do the method we like to refer to as MAD. Now, I don't mean get mad because you see a fraction, but MAD, as in multiply, and then we're going to add, and then we're going to write down a denominator. So this is called the MAD method, and you've probably seen this before. So the multiply refers to, we're going to take the denominator and we're going to multiply it by this big whole number. So we're going to go this way first. I'm going to draw a multiplication symbol down here at the bottom. So 4 times 3 is 12, and I'm going to write that answer up here at the top. All right, so that's my multiplication step, 4 times 3, the bottom number times the whole number. So put you a multiplication symbol there. Then the next step is to add. Well, we've multiplied on the bottom, so we're going to add on the top. So I got the answer 12, and I'm just going to add this 1 in the numerator to it. So 12 plus 1 is 13. That's going to be my new numerator. So I multiplied, and then I added. And then the last step is just to carry over the denominator. So the denominator here was 4. I'm just going to write down 4 again. So 3 1/4 is equivalent to the improper fraction. Notice how this is top heavy, right? So we know we've arrived at an improper fraction. It's equivalent to the improper fraction 13/4. So I'm going to write down 2 of these, and if you want to pause the video and try it yourself, make sure you use the MAD method. I'm going to keep this up here if you want to pause the video. So 9 3/5, we want to change that into an improper fraction. And then 3 6/7, we want to change that into an improper fraction. So if you want to, go ahead and pause the video, use the multiply and add method, multiply and add, and see if you can write these as improper fractions. All right, so I hope you paused the video, and so let's check our answers. So multiplication first, the denominator gets multiplied by the big number on the bottom. 5 times 9 is the number 45. And then across the top we're going to add. So 45 plus 3 gives me the number 48. And I'm going to keep my denominator. So the 5 just sort of slides over. 48/5 is the equivalent improper fraction for 9 3/5. And similarly, the last example, we're going to do multiplication on the bottom. So 7 times 3 gives me 21. We're going to add across the top, MAD. And so 21 plus 6 gives me the number 27. and I slide my denominator over. 27 over 7 is the equivalent improper fraction there. So make sure you have both of those copied down. This is going from mixed numbers to improper fractions. And again, you might be asking yourself, well, why would I ever need to do this? This just seems silly. Why am I just changing the numbers around? Well, again, sometimes as we move forward in 6th grade math, sometimes it's going to be much easier to deal with the mixed number, but sometimes it's going to be impossible to do the math with the mixed number, and we're going to have to translate it into improper fraction to be able to even do the math. So we need to be able to go from one to the next. All right, let's move on to changing an improper fraction back into a mixed number. So here we're kind of working backwards from what we were previously doing. And so let's look at the example of 11 over 8, which is a top-heavy improper fraction. So for an improper fraction, the thing you need to remember is division is the action. I know that's cheesy, but for an improper fraction, division is the action. And so let's look at what we would do with 11/8. In order to get that top-heavy number away, we have to remember that a fraction just actually means to divide, right? 11 divided by 8 is really what this fraction is doing, or really what it is representing or saying. And so what we are going to do is we are going to divide. Now, when we talk about division, the division bar, which one of these numbers goes inside the division bar? You may have heard it explained before as the top dog goes in the doghouse. The top number goes on the inside, and this dog is going to stay outside. If you've got two dogs at home, you know one of them's always called the alpha dog, right? They're the one who gets the bed. They're the one who takes the house. So 11 is the top dog. He's going inside the doghouse, and the 8 is going to be on the outside. So we are doing 11 divided by 8 here. And so we're going to work through this division problem really quickly. How many times does 8 go into, I mean, maybe you start with how many times does 8 go into 1? Well, 8 goes into 1 0 times, right? And you can write a 0 here if you want to, but really we need to ask ourselves, how many times will 8 go into the number 11? It'll go in once. 8 fits into 11 only one time. 2 8s would be 16. And so remember the long division process. 8 goes into 11 once. Then we have to multiply 1 times 8 in order to get a remainder. And remember the next step is to subtract. 11 minus 8 is 3. And believe it or not, you have your mixed number here. It's just hard to see. And so I always like to do what's called around the world. So how many whole times, because remember, a mixed number is a whole number with a fractional piece, right? How many whole times did 8 go into 11? It went in one whole time. So I'm going to start with that one whole. That's going to be my big number. And then I'm going to go around the world to get my other pieces. Well, how many pieces were left over? There were 3 pieces left over. That's going to be the top of my fraction. And then what's the denominator? It's always going to be 8, right? We just keep the denominator. So we go around to what were we dividing by? We were dividing by 8. So 11/8 is the same thing as 1 and 3/8 as a mixed number. So long division or division is the action when we're going from improper to mixed. We want to divide. So let's look at another example. That's a little longer process than what we were doing over here. So let's do one more together. So let's look at 27 over 5. The number 27 over 5. Also improper, right? Top number's too big. So when we see the top number too heavy, we're going to draw our division bar. 27 goes inside, top number inside the division bar, top dog inside the doghouse, 5 on the outside, and then we begin dividing. Well, how many times will 5 go into 2? 5 will not fit into 2. So we have to go to 5 into 27. How many times does 5 go into 27? Well, think about your 5 timetables. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 is very close to 27. So 5 goes into 27 5 times. Now we're ready to multiply. 5 times 5 gives me 25. But that leaves me with a remainder of 2. 27 take away 25. So what is this going to be as a mixed number? Well, again, we start with the whole number. How many whole times did it go in? Up there at the top, 5 is going to be my big number. Then I go around the world to get my piece, with 2 out of 5 left over. So my final answer here is 5 2/5 is equivalent to 27/5. All right, I'm going to give you one more if you want to try this one on your own, maybe by pausing the video. So 35 over 4. Go ahead and pause the video and try the division and see if you can figure out what would this be as a mixed number. Alright, I hope you paused the video and you've started it again, and so the final answer, you should have put 35 inside the division bar, 4 on the outside. You might have had to think really far up into your 4 times tables, which is why it's so important to have your times tables memorized, guys. If you don't, maybe be practicing those on your own. 4 goes into 35 8 times, because 8 times 4 is 32. That's as close as we can get to 35. Subtract 35 minus 32 and we get 3, and so our final answer is 8 3/4. 8 being my whole number and 3/4 being my fractional piece. And so that is going from an improper fraction into a mixed number. So make sure you have these notes written down, make sure you have all those examples copied, and make sure you have them out in front of you while you're practicing this topic.